Good morning, class. This is Miss Bird, and we're watching your first video for your flipped videos this year. You're watching this one in class today, so we can go over some examples of what's expected of you when you are taking notes at home. Right now in front of you, you should have your composition book open to the real number system, and we're going to look at different sets of numbers. The first group, that's the smallest group in the real number system, are natural numbers. These are also called counting numbers, and they are numbers that are used to count objects. For instance, these are the numbers you learn to count when you are very first being taught. You have 1, 2, 3, and then these go on forever. Notice they are all positive and it starts at 1. Our next set of numbers are known as whole numbers. Whole numbers are a box that is bigger than natural numbers because they include all of the natural numbers, and they also include the number 0. So whole numbers are all of the natural numbers or counting numbers, and they have 0 included. They can be written a number of ways. For instance, we could have the number 4 halves. 4 divided by 2 is 2, so it would be a whole number and a natural number. Or the square root of 25. The square root of 25 is 5, so that would be a whole number and a natural number. The next group we're going to look at are the integers. The integers are the set of natural numbers and their opposites, also known as negatives, and 0. So the integer box is bigger than the whole numbers and the natural numbers because they include all of the natural numbers, and integers include 0. In addition to 0 and the natural numbers, they also have our negatives, like -3 or -10/5. -10/5 is -2, and then -4, and everything else with our whole numbers and natural numbers. The next group, we're going to look at our rational numbers. Remember, ratio means a fraction, so rational numbers are any number that can be written as a ratio in the form of a fraction. They're a box bigger than our natural, our whole, and our integers. That means they include everything. They include all the natural numbers, they include all the whole numbers, they include integers, but then we add in our fractions like -2/3. They also include things like 1/2 or 5/8. You might see decimals like 0.37, which would be 37/100ths. Or you may see repeating decimals like 0.31 repeating. That would be a rational number. We could write that as a fraction. The next group we're going to look at are the irrational numbers. Any number that cannot be written as a ratio in the form of a fraction is an irrational number. So we have our natural, our whole, our integers, and our rational numbers. They each make up a bigger group. Our irrational numbers are numbers that cannot be written as a fraction, like the square root of 10. 10 is not a perfect square. If we found the square root of 10, it would be a decimal that goes on forever. We call that non-terminating and non-repeating. We might have 1.6 square rooted. That would be an irrational number because that decimal is going to go on forever and never repeat. A number we use a lot in math is pi. Pi is an irrational number because that decimal goes on forever and does not repeat. Things like 0.1010001000. Yes, there's a pattern, but they do not repeat. There is not a repeating pattern here, so this would be an irrational number. Alright, so during the lesson you should have been filling in your chart. We now have numbers filled in for all of our groupings, our classifications with our natural, our whole, our integers, and our rational numbers, and then we also have our irrational numbers. During the video at home, you can pause and rewind as needed. So tomorrow night's video over scientific notation, you can pause and rewind as many times as you need. Alright, looking at the bottom of your real number system page, this is just another way to classify numbers. So we're doing the same thing, but we're organizing them in a different visual. Our first one we have is the real number system. So rational and irrational numbers make up the real number system. And then we have so rational numbers and irrational numbers make up the real number system. We're going to fill that in. And remember, rational numbers can be written as a ratio or a fraction, and irrational numbers cannot. Rational numbers include repeating decimals or terminating decimals. Irrational numbers, the decimals do not stop and do not repeat. A group smaller than our rational numbers would be the integers. Remember, the integers are positive and negative numbers, whole numbers, and 0. And then underneath our integers, we would have whole numbers. Our whole numbers only include 0 and positive natural numbers. And then our last group, our smallest group, is natural numbers. They have 1, 2, 3, and it keeps going forever. All right, we're going to use this knowledge now to work on some classifications of numbers. Okay, please keep your math journal out while we are doing this so that you can refer back to it in class each day. You'll want to have your journal with you with your notes from the previous night's lesson so that you can refer back to it as often as you need to.